And you're live.
Okay, we're back Friday, March 28th, 2025, continuing our work with our strike all amendment of H 454. We are in the markup and possible vote stage. Working with legislative council now to go over a few changes. Most notably, having conferred with the Agency of Education concerning the emergency funding for construction needs. We got some clarification.
Referring it to me.
And yes,
Okay, Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. So I'm going to share my screen, and what I think would be helpful for all of us would be for me to just work from a Word document and mark up as we go from here on out.
Good.
So you won't have something that matches what we're looking at on your website, but I will be sharing my screen.
perfect.
Okay, so this is your strike all amendment of H 454. This is technically draft 8.1, and it contains the changes we've made since this morning. But most recently, in the school construction chunk of the bill, we are in section 14, which starts on page 36, line 11, but the applicable language is far below that. I just want to orient you to where we are in the law. So approval and funding of school construction projects. This is where the application and all of the considerations that go into whether or not school construction aid will be granted is laid out. And we're on page 41, line 13. I don't know why I'm saying this. I'm the only one with this document. So this is making a change to the emergency aid provision. So current law, and this has not been edited, so if there's typos or things, we'll get it fixed. Current law it refers back up to, it says that the secretary can grant emergency aid in this, according to how it's done in this subsection, and in current law or subdivision, and in current law, this is 30%. Okay. Which is, I think, the hang up that everyone was getting at from the 20 to 30.
Mm-hmm.
So after talking to Bob Donahue, this is what my understanding of what AOE is recommending. And if Bob is listening, hopefully he can ping Annie if this is wrong. But what the goal here is to get school districts a maximum amount of $90,000 per emergency construction aid. And that would be giving the secretary the ability to grant aid for a project that the secretary deems to be an emergency in the amount of 30% of eligible costs up to a maximum eligible total project cost of $300,000. And I didn't do the math, but Bob indicated the 30% of $300,000 is $90,000.
Yeah. Kate,
Close enough.
Kate, could you verify, please?
Yep.
All right.
Some of
Yeah.
us.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
So Kate can be in charge of them.
Okay, I'm assuming we're all okay with this. Really appreciate all the footwork you did on being able to have that corrected before we vote the bill out.
Thank you very much to AOE for quick getting in touch, feedback and getting in touch with me.
All right. Let's return then to State Board of Education, which is where we left off before lunch.
So I haven't made any changes to the appointment process itself. And I don't think I've made, let's see, have I made any changes? Yes,
You did.
look at that. I just didn't highlight it. Is this what we were looking at, right? You want to look at it right now? Okay, so this is the removal section. So after notice and hearing, the governor may remove a member of the state board for incompetency, failure to discharge the member's duties, malfeasance, illegal acts, or other cause inimical to the welfare of the public schools, And in case of such removal, the appointing authority that made the initial appointment shall appoint a person to fill the unexpired term.
Okay.
I think you cut out a whole paragraph.
Chop, chop.
I did, yep.
Okay. Again, as we sort of go down this path of transformation that is going to require a lot on the legislature's part and on the workings of the State Board of Education, at least as how we have envisioned it to date. I continue to believe that sort of more eyes on the makeup of the State Board of Education is good. I think the de minimis, to use the word that was used yesterday, sort of level at which we have done this, I think is acceptable. May not be perfect. So I continue to support this. Anybody else is welcome to weigh in, but I would like to do a little straw poll on it. Yes.
May I suggest that you look at the transition language first?
Oh,
yeah, we
Did we skip that?
Sure, that all
Yeah.
sounds complicated and a lot of math involved, but
Is that okay?
Okay.
Is
Yes.
that okay?
Yeah, no issue.
So, the transition language would have, current members finishing their terms. But the new removal law is gonna take effect, so, but current members would fill their terms. And then beginning on July 1, which is where, what I believe this section would take effect in, although again, that's a policy choice. As terms of currently serving members expire, appointments of successors shall be made in accordance with the considerations and appointment authority contained in the changes you're making. And then indented from that, under that kind of heading, the speaker would make the first appointment to a vacant or expired seat that occurs after July 1, and then make any subsequent appointments to fill that seat. Committee on Committees would make the second appointment to a vacancy or an expired seat on July 1, after July 1, 2025, and then the governor would make the third. And then once the first three appointments are made after July 1, 2025, the governor would make all subsequent appointments for the remaining 7 seats.
Seven?
Yeah.
I think it's 5.
No, I think it's 7.
Yeah, that's right.
5 and 2 kids,
It's 8, it's 3,
5 and
it
2
is
kids?
5, yep.
5 and 2 kids.
5, 6, 7, that's only 8, it's
Yeah.
10.
Yeah, but only
It's-
some of the seats
The
are.
2 kids are not in play here, and
Right.
neither is the
Secretary.
secretary.
The 2 kids are not in play.
Oh,
Okay.
Those are good-
I thought they
those
were.
are-
Here, well, let's do
gubernatorial
this, the
appointments.
remaining 5
Well, there's 11,
non-student seats.
right, but isn't there 11 total seats?
10.
there's always one of them.
10.
Oh,
Right.
10.
Because
Because
we have gone
always
round
one
and
of
round on this, haven't we?
8 seats that are appointed by someone.
There's 10
There's
seats that are
10,
appointed.
2 are
Oh,
student.
Okay,
and
8
then-
non-student.
And then you've got 3
Okay, 2.
appointments being made here.
So, oh, there does say that.
2,
3,
3, one
Speaker.
governor.
Senate, and 1 governor.
Oh.
And then roll.
Ah.
roll-
And then you roll
None
in.
of us were catching
Yeah.
the third one as the governor.
I know.
Sorry, we had
Said
expensive
Kate's
legal
in charge
counsel.
of math.
I get, this is a great point. I guess you don't need the third, I guess you don't need this one. I guess you don't need 3.
And then
No,
you
we
change
just
the 5 to 6, that's fine too.
So you're saying is we don't explicitly need to say that this next one.
I kind of like it,
But it
though.
would be
It
anyway.
would default.
Yeah, it would default, yeah, to the governor. So I don't believe you need 3. It doesn't matter if you keep it in, like, it's fine to keep it in if you want it.
Okay.
Well, it might help other people.
What is my clear and unambiguous guidance?
Why don't we leave it there? So it's clear to everybody.
Okay.
And nobody has to say, well, what happens on the third? All right, so we've been through this.
Oh, I know why. I'm sorry. I know why I did this. I believe there's gonna be 3 people up at one time.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I believe there's gonna be 3 seats up at one time.
There you
but they rotated more. Off kilter than that. Okay. Draw poll, all those in favor of the language as we have it, hand raise. Great, that would be enough to have to be part of this.
Effective date, July 1, 2025, for all 3 of these sections. the appointments, the transition, the removal power.
Yeah. Don't be surprised if the Senate may take that first appointment up over us. That'll be part of the conference committee. I wonder if we aren't now at the point where we just start at the top and go through.
Sure.
And much of it we can go through very quickly because we've gone through it.
One more time.
Casey?
Okay, so again,
And we won't.
this is a strike all amendment to H 454 as introduced. You're beginning with the findings and intent section, which would take effect on passage. Do you want to read through the findings one more time, or?
I would leave that up to the committee if ever, I would have to see lots of heads nodding. for that. Okay, I'm not.
Moving on.
The nodding heads might be doing this. Soon.
Intent. I did make some changes here. It is further the intent of the General Assembly to, in the 2026 session, enact new larger school district boundaries and begin the process to create voting wards within each school district to ensure school board membership is apportioned in such a manner, et cetera, of all voters in the election of school board members.
Thank you.
And then the last two pieces of intent have not changed since we walked through them this morning. The commission on the changes to the Commission on the Future of Public Education would take effect on passage. Now is the time to get effective dates right, by
Thank
the
you.
way.
Yeah, do remind us that we need to do effective dates. And that needs to be on passage.
So we are adding non-voting members, 5 of them. All of whom shall have extensive experience working within the Vermont public education system. There needs to be coordination to the extent possible so that each of the 5 non-voting members represent a different geographic region of the state. 2 members will be appointed by the speaker, one of whom shall be a retired or former Vermont superintendent of a supervisory union with multiple school districts, and one of whom shall either be either a retired or former Vermont school business manager or a retired or former school board member. 2 members shall be appointed by the Committee on Committees, one of whom shall be a retired or former Vermont superintendent, and one of whom shall be a retired or former school business manager. And 1 member shall be appointed by the governor, who shall be a retired or former Vermont superintendent. We good with this? Okay. Then we make a bunch of conforming amendments throughout to update the commission's charge. The first big one here is that you are removing the finance subcommittee. You're essentially getting rid of it. Because you've taken all of the finance work out of the committee's charge. But you do leave it up to the commission to form a subcommittee on any topic with their own members. So they could reconstitute a finance subcommittee, they just couldn't have non-members on it. We're not changing any of, we didn't change, let's see. We changed the shall consult with to a may. And now we get into making changes to the duties of the commission. So we're striking the language that requires the commission to recommend a statewide vision, and instead they would be providing recommendations for the state level education governance system, including the roles and responsibilities of AOE and the state board. Public engagement stays the same. The governance, now we're getting into all the policy considerations. And you're only keeping you're only keeping subdivision A here, governance. And you are amending that to remove the consideration of the integration of CTE into the recommended vision of the state. You're no longer asking the commission to recommend a vision of the state. You're removing the physical size and footprint of the education system considerations. You are removing the role of public schools considerations. You are removing the education finance system considerations. And you are removing additional considerations. Do you want to leave that or do you want to remove it?
No, I think additional consideration should stay in. But you've got a lot of unknowns out there.
Okay, so deliverables, reports, and we're gonna get rid of proposed legislation because we've struck that. Already done subdivisions 1 and 2, and so their final deliverable to you all will be a report containing its final recommendations based on its analysis of the state level governance topics contained in subdivision E2A of this section on or before December 1st of this year. That's it. That's all you're gonna get from them.
Okay, but we are requiring something from the subcommittee.
This is
and
the
does that-
commission.
Should,
This
yeah.
is separate,
is that, okay, second.
completely separate.
I was just having a little inner debate about whether that should go through the full commission or not. I think that's a good idea, and I think why clog up the works?
Is there a section in there that says that the full commission can be?
Thought we did do that.
Yeah.
Are we getting anything on the public engagement process, like a report back from that or?
You guys,
I think it comes.
we
later.
haven't gotten there yet.
We're waiting.
Okay, so we don't change the assistance of the committee at all, or the commission at all. We don't change anything about members or meetings, et cetera. Okay, now here's the meat of the school district boundary subcommittee work. This is separate from the commission, but there is language in here about using the public engagement process. So there is created a subcommittee of the commission to be composed of the 5 non-voting members that shall determine the most efficient number of school districts and proposed boundary lines based on educational research, Vermont's geographic and cultural landscape, historic attendance patterns, and a comprehensive analysis of school locations, conditions, and capacity.
Did we ever talk about maybe adding in there how long kids would be on a bus?
There, yeah, we did talk about that earlier today. And that's sort of at the next level. In other words, they're literally just drawing lines. They're not deciding where students go to school.
Okay, but they are taking into account geographic landscape,
Yeah.
so. Okay,
Duties of the subcommittee. They shall recommend not more than 3 school district boundary proposals to you all. The proposed school district boundaries shall increase equitable access to educational opportunity, maximize opportunities for modern, regional, middle, and high schools, the least disruption to students, provide access to education for their resident students in grades kindergarten through 12, provide access to CTE for all eligible students, to the extent practical, not separate towns within the districts as those boundaries exist on July 1 of this year. To the extent practical, consider the availability of regional services for students, such as designated agencies, and how those services would integrate into the new proposed school district boundaries. To the extent practical, results in school districts with a minimum average daily membership of approximately 4,000 students. And to the extent practical, consider historic attendance patterns and geographic areas that do not operate public schools at all grade levels from kindergarten through grade 12.
Is there any flexibility left in that number of 4,000 students? Like, could that be a range that would fit?
We have an approximately. in front of it.
Well, so that seems open to interpretation. Does approximately mean 2,000 to 4,000?
I would say that this is strong guidance. It is not saying 2,000, but it is also not. There's a request here for 3 possible maps. I suspect it is possible that they could put one in that has less than 4,000 if they felt strongly about that, or they could report having felt strongly that
Mhm.
4,000 was too many. This is just a recommendation. I personally would like to keep the approximately 4,000 because I think it makes an important statement that we are serious about scale.
Right.
So,
And maybe on a Friday afternoon, this is the wrong time to bring this up, especially on March 28th, but would it be also logical, kind of along these lines, not size, but I mean like maybe for the Northeast Kingdom to get to 4,000, it's gotta bend down to Rutland or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
should we?
That's why it says to the
That's
extent.
what I'm thinking, like, I was thinking like square mileage or something as
I,
well.
I think to the extent practical, answers that, because
Okay.
you're absolutely right, yes.
So there's nothing in this language that necessarily forces schools to consolidate or communities to have districts that are
This is strictly,
unreasonable.
they are providing a
Yeah,
recommendation to the
okay.
legislature.
We'll be able to change it, yeah.
To the extent, correct.
And we can change it. We
Okay.
can just say, oh, we like this one, but it needs to do this,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
We would never do that. Rob.
Yes. You retain ultimate authority over all of the decisions.
That's right.
Okay.
This is just giving you a product to run with in January.
Yep.
Okay. The subcommittee may consider and make recommendations for the optimal location of schools, including CTE programs, to meet the requirements contained that we just walked through. The subcommittee shall provide regular updates to the commission regarding its work. And the subcommittee shall have the sole authority to determine the contents of the report and maps required under subdivision 4 of this subsection. The commission may provide its own comments to the subcommittee and the relevant committee's jurisdiction, either as an addendum to the report of the subcommittee or as a separate report. Does that meet your goal?
Thank you.
Okay. Public engagement. The district boundary subcommittee shall engage and coordinate with the commission's public engagement subcommittee and the public engagement consultant to maximize public input and feedback regarding the development of the proposed new school district boundaries. We haven't talked about this section much, subdivision. The district boundary subcommittee shall have the assistance of the Agency of Digital Services Vermont Center for Geographic Information, which may also retain the services of one or more independent third parties to provide facilitation and mediation services to the subcommittee. They don't hold any of the money.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm saying, yeah, I'm saying, yes, I understand what you just said. The money rests with the Agency of Education. Is there language that could smooth the channel for that money? And I'm going to assume that you don't have a ready answer for that.
It depends on what your goal is. Is it for AOE to keep the money and contract for a consultant on behalf of the subcommittee? Is that your goal, or do you want the money to go to ADS so that they can hold the contract? Either way, we can make that work.
Yeah, I guess for now, I would just leave it alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reports and maps. On or before December 1st, 2025, the district boundary subcommittee shall submit the following to the House and Senate Committees on Education, the House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs, the Senate Committee on Government Operations, and the House Committee on Ways and Means, and the Senate Committee on Finance. So they have to submit a report with the subcommittee's proposed new school district boundaries and detail how each proposed option meets the requirements contained up above. So basically their methodology of their maps. And then B, maps. The subcommittee also has to submit detailed maps for each proposal, which in addition to the school district boundaries themselves need to include average daily membership for each proposed school district for the 2023-2024 school year. The member towns for each school district, the location of public schools and non-therapeutic approved independent schools that are eligible to receive public tuition as of July 1, 2025, and the grades operated by each of those schools. The 5-year facility condition index score for each school, PCB testing score for each school, and 10-year change in enrollment between 2013 and 2023 for each school. And that is everything for the subcommittee's work.
Okay.
All right.
Moving on to your scale bucket. We have your scale intent section taking effect on July 1, 2025. It is the intent of the General Assembly to transform education in Vermont by leveraging attainable and research-based scale to increase equity of opportunity and promote efficiency and affordability. And then your first substantive section in this bucket is the class size minimums, the amendment to the Education Quality Standards statute, which would take effect on July 1, 2026. Is that where we're going with this? Okay. So adding a new requirement in EQS, Education Quality Standards, Public schools would need to comply with average class size minimum standards. Provided, however, that when class size minimums apply to content areas, an individual class may be smaller than the minimum average. As used in this subdivision, content area means a group of courses within a specific licensing endorsement area. Class size standards for kindergarten, all classes, the minimum average is 12 students. For grades 1 through 4, the minimum average is 15 students. And for grades 5 through 12, the average class size minimum for all required content area classes is 18 students. Multi-age classrooms for grades kindergarten through 8 are limited to 2 grade levels per classroom. CTE, flexible pathways, terminal courses, advanced placement courses, courses that require specialized equipment and driver's education classes shall be excluded from the class size minimum requirements. Small group services for the purposes of providing special education, supplemental or targeted academic intervention, or EL instruction shall also be excluded from the minimums. And then class sizes shall not exceed the maximum occupancy limits established by local and state fire codes, including egress and safety requirements. If a school board determines that it operates a school that is unable to comply with the class size minimum standards due to geographic isolation, or a school has developed an implementation plan to meet the standards, the class size minimum standards, the school board may ask the State Board of Education to grant it a waiver. The state board shall define what qualifies as geographic isolation and its rules adopted pursuant to subdivision A3 of the section, which is the EQS rules in general. And the state board's decision shall be final. Now that we're back in this, we did not bring this requirement to define geographic isolation into the approved independent school.
Or that we had actually, no.
We hadn't. So something to think about when we get there. This, if the secretary determines that a school is not meeting class size minimum standards over the course of 2 consecutive years, the secretary shall recommend to the state board one or more of the actions listed in subdivision B of this section, which is current law for what happens when a school is not meeting education quality standards, regardless of whether the school is meeting all other education quality standards, right? It can't be like, well, you're doing everything else, we're not gonna take a look at you. The state board shall then follow the procedure of subsection C, which again is the due process for this review. And then that's it for class size minimums.
That's a good question about that. The part where you said regardless, can we go back to that section? I mean, I think it would be good to consider if they're meeting every other quality standard. I don't know what would want to get in statute. Like it almost, I guess it seems too much to say unless they're meeting all other, but that should be considered. Like if a small school is thriving.
I would say that, you know, in meeting class size minimums, which is a pretty specific thing, then you're sort of getting toward more of a school viability issue. I would, this is meant to be a standard that is working towards scale. And we have said repeatedly that scale is important both for financial viability, but also better for kids. So I think it could make things really complicated for the state board and for everybody if we sort of blended and braided everything together. Again, this issue is also relatively temporary in that it speaks to the current state as opposed to the future state. And the long bureaucratic process that will probably get beaten by the future state.
I just want to make sure that in whatever product we end up with in the end, in the future state, that we are also acknowledging that Vermont itself does not exist at scale, that there are really urban places and there are really urban
I like urban.
There are urban places, and rural places.
I would
Just made a new
I
word.
would only argue that in the sense that there are actually no urban places in Vermont.
Okay, fine, there are urban and rural places.
There you go.
I'm wondering if
It's a kind
Leanne's
of-
concern, and I share that concern, is handled or taken care of in the waiver process. Because a school can apply for a waiver, you know, that they can't meet the class size minimums. And if a school who's doing well and not meeting class size minimums has applied for a waiver, then the non-compliance issue for that doesn't even come up.
I would just be clear, waiver is only
this-
due to geographic isolation, or they have a developed plan to
Right.
move towards scale. I mean, yeah.
But
I
geographic
appreciate what you're
isolation is
saying.
probably
I
the
appreciate what you're saying,
reason.
But part of what we're really
right?
trying to say here is that going forward in Vermont, scale is important.
Yeah.
And I would hate to, and for this sort of temporary period, I would hate to back away from that message. I understand your concern. The chances of sort of any of this coming to reality before a future state is in
Mhm.
place is highly unlikely.
Cause it's a 2-year process to even have it come to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
It's gonna
there's
be a
the
10-year
process.
process,
of-
but it's a.
Right.
but yeah, I mean, there are people that live in the country that want somewhat of small schools, and there are also places that it will never be as large as it is going to be in Burlington.
This says nothing about school size. This is only about class sizes.
Yeah.
And it does bring into account geographic isolation.
That term is what's hanging me up, the geographic isolation versus the people that choose to live in rural communities that are within a reasonable drive to less rural communities. I mean, it's this
I-
middle ground.
I appreciate all of that, but that sort of goes back to the bigger problem of not operating at scale and the cost of it. I mean, yes, we need to be forward thinking here.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of it, I understand, like, we want to stop paying for those rural people, but it is Vermont, these rural people exist.
Yeah.
These rural, I mean, we can't just
And no one's saying
pretend
we
that
don't want
they.
to pay for it. We're just saying
No.
we need to have it, some
Not how it
minimums of class sizes.
Mhm.
Let's push through here.
Failure to comply with education quality standards. This section would also take effect on July 1, 2026. The state board is prohibited from ordering school district consolidation or school consolidation if a school fails to comply with class size minimum education quality standards. And the resulting consolidation would result in school construction costs in excess of the applicable district's capital reserve account until the General Assembly establishes new school district boundaries and takes further action regarding the consequences for failure to meet education quality standards.
And I'm sorry,
Okay,
are we still, we're only talking about public schools here?
Yes, this is only applicable to public schools. You ask this, yes,
But somewhere we have something about,
this is about, you can't comply basically two public schools to merge if it's gonna cost them $4 million and you've only got $100,000 in your capital reserve.
Section 6, State Board of Education rules report. So we have this section taking effect on July 1, 2025, but then within it, there are different deliverable dates. So the section would take effect, but then everything would be due on the dates in here. So the state board shall initiate rulemaking to amend the Education Quality Standards Rule 2000 series on or before January 1st, 2027. They would be making amendments to ensure compliance with class size minimums. Is that I don't know that we've spent much time talking about these dates. Close, so class size minimums in statute go into effect on July 1, 2026. And then you're asking the state board to have rules, to initiate rulemaking on or before July 1, 2027. To ensure that their EQS doesn't conflict with what's in statute.
So these are dates to initiate rulemaking.
Correct.
It's not-
Which is ICAR.
It does not have the deliverable.
No.
Okay.
Well. They have to initiate it.
Yeah.
And then on or before July 1st, 2027, they would be required to adopt standards for statewide proficiency-based graduation requirements based on standards adopted by the state board and recommendations from the Agency of Education that you are then requiring the Agency of Education to make later on in the bill. And I don't know if we talked about this date at all.
Okay, again, this would be on or before July 1st, 2027, they would initiate rulemaking to adopt standards.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Shouldn't the class size minimums be earlier? The initiate on or before July 1, 2026?
They technically don't take effect until July 1, 2026. And so I built in a 6-month runway to get them up and running, but you could certainly say on or before August 1st or July 1st, 2026. I think that would be, my feedback is should not be important on this date. More for the field to comment on.
You want to do it in August 1st, 2026, just to sort of make the statements?
Sure.
Do we want to ask the people in the field who are in the room?
This is more of a, can the state board
This is
actually
rulemaking, yeah.
start initiating that rulemaking? Let's be aspirational here.
You want to say August 1st,
Yeah.
2026?
So 1 month after it goes in. That's that right?
Yeah.
It's July 1st.
Good with July 1 for initiating graduation requirement rulemaking?
Yeah.
And then on or before January 1st, 2027, the state board shall initiate rulemaking to amend the approved independent school rule series.
The same thing?
Yep.
So does that, so you want to change that date also?
Bless you. Thank you. So they're amending the 2200 series, which is the independent school approval program, school program approval rules to require approved independent schools that intend to accept public tuition to comply with class size minimum standards. And the amendment shall also create a process for review by the state board for failure to meet class size minimum requirements and the corresponding actions the board may take for such noncompliance. Provided, however, that the board shall provide an approved independent school a substantially similar opportunity to come into compliance with class size minimum standards that it would provide to a public school. And then the waiver process is built into the requirement itself later on. And then a report back to you all on or before December 1st, 2025. State board is required to submit a written report to you all with proposed standards for schools to be deemed small by necessity. School size intent language would take effect July 1, 2025. It is the intent of the General Assembly to encourage the efficient use of public funds to modernize school infrastructure to deliver identified 21st century educational goals. It is further the intent of the General Assembly that each public school operating grades 6 through 12 or some subset of those grades shall have a minimum average daily membership of at least 450 students, at least in part by providing a robust state aid for school construction program that is driven by standards for quality for public schools, geographic accessibility, statewide enrollment trends, and capacity and scale that support substantially equal educational opportunities for all Vermont students. This is just intent language. Section 8 would also take effect on July 1, 2025, prohibition on school closure and transition to paying tuition. Notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, a school district shall be prohibited from closing an existing public school and then providing for the education of its resident students by paying tuition for its students to attend a public or approved independent school chosen by the parents of the district's students. If a school district that closes an existing public school is unable to provide for the education of its affected resident students in a different school or schools operated by the district, the school district shall provide for the education of its resident students by designating 3 or fewer of the public schools to serve as the 3 or fewer public schools to serve as the public school or schools of the district in accordance with the process contained in the designation statute.
So this is a current state situation that will more than likely go away in a future state world.
Do you want to get rid of that other word of?
Yeah.
Where, I'm sorry.
The of.
Right where your
cursor.
cursor.
Thank you. Okay. So now we're heading into the school construction chunk, which would take effect, so the statement of policy would take effect on July 1, 2026. I'm not gonna read through this. Is that, okay, okay. Oop. Oh my goodness. I think my hands are sweating. Okay, so section 10 would also take effect on July 1, 2026.
Can you go back just for a second? Let's not finish reading. Let's do the policy. Didn't we have something in here about larger, middle and high schools?
This is the language that the bill was introduced.
That is in the,
Subcommittee.
subcommittee drawing lines, I think, where it talks about, opportunities for
Larger regional.
Okay,
middle school, high schools.
thanks.
Section 10, again, would also take effect on July 1, 2026. This is creating the school state aid for school construction program within AOE, and it lists all of the responsibilities of AOE in that program. And then section 11 creates state aid for school construction advisory board. This section would take effect on July 1, 2025 to allow for appointments to be made or considered in the interim. But the first meeting of the advisory board, which its duty is just that, to advise the agency on school construction. Its first meeting would not take effect until July 1, 2026.
I'm just thinking in my head, if it's not a funded, up and running program, we need to make that contingent. Then, or do we? I put that in there too.
This is, so, you can certainly make this advisory board contingent on funding.
Does this lock the world into having this board be appointed by July 1st, 2026, if we were to never change the date?
Yeah, I would say so, yes. I will say, again, just for consideration, this is an advisory group. So if you are asking AOE to create a school construction program now, like division now, which you have language in there, asking them to come back to you, the advisory board should technically, according to this, be advising them on that creation. So I
And we
think
can
there would
adjust
be.
as, we can adjust as necessary in the future.
Mhm. Again, at the end of the day, it's a policy choice.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna go through there, literally advising the agency on all of the agency's duties related to state aid for school construction. Oh no, you have this, we bumped everything to now. And I wonder, I don't remember, but I'm wondering if the conversation was around getting up and running.
I'm gonna guess that that came in as is from the bill written by the task force. Speculating. I don't think we've changed it.
You're probably right. Probably aspirational as well.
Yeah.
It did.
That's just original language that we
Yeah.
haven't changed.
Yep. Do you want to keep it or change
Would
it?
it make sense to say something like, call the first meeting within 3 months of when the AOE creates the positions and division? I don't know.
All right, so right now we have July 1st, 2026 to create the advisory committee.
2025. The section would take effect 2025 and the first meeting would be occurring this summer.
Okay, I thought we. Okay. So when I said, oh, we can just bump that forward in the future, we actually can't because the future is now.
I thought, that's my fault. I thought this was 2026. I thought the first meeting would occur in 2026, but I was wrong.
So therefore, we should have the committee named by July 1st, 2026, and have the treasurer call the first meeting by August 15th, 2026. Is that basically making things a little more reasonable? Or do we have an issue when we are asking AOE to come back with a proposal for a school construction division? Really asking Chris and Aaron here.
So the duties of this advisory group, maybe that'll help. They are providing advice on rules, project priorities, proposed legislation, policies and procedures, development of formal enrollment projection model, processes and procedures necessary for some things to do with money, the collection and maintenance of clearinghouse of prototypical school plans, determination of eligible class components, development of a long-term vision for statewide capital plan, collection and maintenance of data on school facilities, advising districts on the use of needs survey, encouraging school districts and supervisor unions to investigate opportunities for maximum utilization of space. So this is all work that the agencies should be doing,
Yeah,
but then the advisory committee would be advising AOE on all of that. But the program itself is not taking effect until July 1, 2026.
right, okay.
So
Yes. It's a tight deadline to even form it and call the first meeting. However, I do sort of like those duties and glad you went back and read them to us.
I was gonna say, there's too many.
Can we push it out a couple months? Just like,
So we may have to look at,
I mean, not like a whole year, but a few months.
we could even say January 1st, 2026.
I like that.
We always do pick summer dates. Maybe it's time we shake it up a little bit and pick a winter
Yeah,
date.
let's leave people alone. Let them have their summers. Look around.
okay. So the section itself would take effect July 1, 2025. And the first meeting would need to occur before on or before January 1, 2026. So the appointments would need to be made anytime before then in order to achieve that date. And their duties would be advising AOE on the school construction program, that AOE is actually reporting back to you all on how they are going to stand that up within AOE.
I guess if we are going to be serious about making a statement that school construction aid is important and needs to happen, we keep pushing dates out further and further, that statement becomes weak. So,
Right.
So the prospective repeal of the advisory board would take effect.
Yep.
Another thought is that there might be a little bit of work for Ways and Means on this next week. Again, I think I mentioned the other day that I don't really understand, but if they're using some of the excess spending penalty money to seed school construction, I'm not sure at what point those things kick in, and so there's gonna be some money.
Sorry, that's,
So I guess
thank you.
probably need to figure out kind of a point person within that needs to be looking at this stuff.
Section 12 would also take effect on July 1, 2025. The prospective repeal of the sunset of the advisory board. Then the school construction fund, which I imagine will probably also get some work in Ways and Means. Would take effect on July 1, 2026. And this is just creating the special fund. Section 14 would also take effect on July 1, 2026. This is approval and funding of school construction projects. This is the application process and all of the things AOE would be considering when looking to approve a project for funding for state aid.
So we just remind people that in the $4 million budget proposal from AOE, they did have a staff person in the school facilities world. In an additional person in that area.
And then this section also includes the emergency aid language we started with this afternoon, which would allow the secretary to pay a grant aid up to 30% of a total of $300,000 eligible, 30% of $300,000, which would be a net of $90,000 that school districts would be eligible for. Obviously, if the total project cost is under $300,000, they would be getting lots. And then section 15 also takes effect on July 1, 2026. This is the language regarding what a school district would do if they did not like the award allocation from AOE, the appeal process. And then section 16 would also take effect on July 1, 2026, the transfer of rulemaking authority from the state board to AOE. And then repeals of current law that would conflict with what you are putting into new law are section 3448 and 3448A. Section 3448 is actually a combination of, it's actually mostly what you have in this section related to the application and all of the priorities and et cetera. And that is it for school construction. Shall I keep going? Because the next one is tuition.
What comes after that?
What comes after tuition?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna scroll. I'm gonna spare us. Hold on. The Agency of Education deliverables.
Let's run through those first.
Okay.
Then we'll take a break.
So the statewide cohesion bucket, section 20 is intent language. It is the intent of the General Assembly to consolidate structures and systems that are foundational to the administration of education.
It'll be there for a second. Just remind everybody that yesterday we got written testimony from the AOE on some of this.
This section 20 would take effect on July 1, 2025, and section 21 would also take effect on July 1, 2025, but within it, there are different deliverable dates. So statewide graduation requirements on or before January 1st, 2026. The Agency of Education shall recommend to the State Board of Education standards for statewide proficiency-based graduation requirements based on standards adopted by the state board.
So all the secretary said is the agency is supportive of creating further system alignment throughout statewide graduation requirements. Currently, EQS outlined the curriculum content areas in which a student must be proficient in order to graduate. However, these are locally determined, creating wide variability across the state. The agency is prepared to support this work in coordination with the transition. I'm not hearing any opposition to what we have here.
Subsection B, statewide school calendar. On or before January 15th, 2027, the Secretary of Education shall develop and publish a statewide calendar for the public schools of the state, including career and technical centers, that shall be in effect in the 2028-2029 academic year and after.
Okay, the agency supports the intention of creating a statewide school calendar. However, we are concerned that the implementation of this calendar is misaligned with the consolidation of school districts as is contemplated in the bill. Creating a calendar absent guidance on the structure of a future state system poses challenges. To me, that's a bit of a timing question. However, I would say we leave this because we're talking, that's getting all the way through 2026. And if we would have new districts hopefully
Next January.
drawn by then next year. So I think I would leave this date. And obviously dates get pushed out as needed in the future by request. Everybody thoughts? Okay. Sometimes I'm talking, I'm like, I sound good, but I don't really know.
The only alignment question I'm worrying about, based on what we have in here, is that the school board elections, the new school district board election, we are hoping to have happen in November of 28, I believe. And the school year for 28-29 starts 9 weeks, just before that. So you'll have your calendar in place just before your new district school boards are voted. Is that a
they'll
problem?
have-
Two thoughts about this.
Yeah.
One,
I'm trying to get the timing
You
down.
could, and there have been many arguments to do this regardless of any other thing in this bill or anything else, so it's not, I
Oh, yeah,
don't
I
think
just want to
it's
be clear,
fully tied.
we're talking
Calendar,
calendar.
Yeah,
Calendar.
there's been, pleas for so long to do this, so this is like, if we changed nothing else and never had new districts, this would still be a very salient issue and need. So I'm a little less swayed on the date on that. To me, the challenging,
That
I
shouldn't be a
suspect,
change.
most challenging part beyond like just sort of culture and tradition, which will be enormous, will be the collective bargaining agreements.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh, yeah, there's that.
because I would actually make it even more aggressive, but I
Yeah.
think the biggest challenges could be, huh?
Do you have a date in mind?
Of when to have new calendars.
I think we-
Go at least a year, but I think it's about collective
It's,
bargaining.
it's been tried for now for
Yeah.
20 years. We haven't
Yeah.
hit a date yet. So
Okay.
I would be cautious about bumping it up too soon.
And in
and
fact, no
actually-
later than, I mean, we can do it sooner.
And probably realistically, we will be asked to delay this so that it can be all part of a new set of collective bargaining agreements in the future districts. But I think for now, why don't we leave it here? As Representative Brady said, because if we can, this alone would be a major step forward.
Subsection C requires a series of report backs to you all on or before December 1st of this year. So written report and recommended legislative language as applicable to the committees on education with the following. In consultation with educators and administrators, recommendations for proposed statewide financial data and student information systems, including a detailed implementation plan for the statewide systems to be operational for use in fiscal year 2029, and the costs associated with procurement and implementation.
Okay, so the agency has said full adoption likely would occur beyond FY 29. Which frankly, I thought was a very realistic view of how long this would actually take. So we are just asking for I would like to shorten this and just say, in consultation, blah, blah, blah. I'm only looking for an implementation plan
Sorry.
for opposed to a system. I don't even think that I would require them sort of naming a financial data and student information system. I would just like, for proposed statewide.
So what is it? So
Yeah.
what do you want?
Yeah, I mean,
Plain English. Don't look at the
recommendation,
language. Plain
we'll have
English.
to read it a recommendation for, proposed statewide. I'm sorry, okay, I would like to see, I'm gonna close my eyes and not read it. I would like to see a planned or a proposed implementation plan for a statewide financial and student information system.
Let's see. Consultation with educators, a proposed implementation plan for a statewide financial data and student information
Is the
system.
grammar of that make it
That's
sound like it has to be
not-
one
no.
system, like we have to find the one.
In consultation with
vendor that's
educators and
both in one?
ministers, proposed implementation plan. A proposed implementation plan for
What do you say, and student
statewide
information?
financial data and student information systems.
Systems maybe
Either
with
make them
S.
both with an article in front of them or put an S on them.
In consultation
Systems.
with educators and administrators, a proposed implementation plan for
Great.
statewide financial data.
Yep.
This is it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, recommendations for a school construction division within AOE, including position descriptions and job duties for each position within the division, a detailed description of the assistance the division would provide to the field, and the overall role the agency would play within a state aid school construction program. A progress report regarding the development of clear, unambiguous guidance that would be provided to school officials and school board members regarding the business processes and transactions that would need to occur to facilitate school district mergers, including the merging of data systems, asset and liability transfers, and how to address collective bargaining agreements for both educators and staff. The report shall include a detailed description of how the agency will provide support and consolidation assistance to the field in each of these areas and an estimate of the cost associated with such work. In consultation with superintendents, directors of therapeutic independent schools, special education directors, and in the opinion of the agency, other experts, recommendations for the need for cooperative education services and the oversight of therapeutic schools within the school governance framework, both at a state and local level.
Okay, how about,